Hi guys, so welcome to another episode of Gibberish with Gerard. This is the 10th episode, and I honestly can't believe that we are entering double digits this week, because honestly it just feels like I started this a couple of weeks ago, just like for fun. But here we are after a good solid 9 weeks. So thank you to all of y'all, for all the support you've given me so far, and for all the constructive feedback as well. So this week, we're going to talk about something that's slightly more serious, I would say, compared to my previous 2 podcast episodes. So, and I think this topic, I really wanted to talk about it for quite some time, but I don't think I was capable of doing it alone, or just because I didn't have that much of a knowledge or background in this particular topic. So this week we're going to talk about fashion. I know that my fashion sense is not great, but I think this is a quite interesting topic to talk about. So when we talk about fashion, there are so many brands out there. When we say fashion, you think of GwG, Tommy Hilfiger, Armani, Zara, Adidas, Nike, Uniqlo, Under Armour, H&M, and the list just goes on. It just goes forever. And in fact, apparently, when I searched on Google, there are close to 191,918 apparel shops or apparel manufacturers in the world, and I'm pretty sure none of us would even know 1% of it. So that's how many fashion brands we have in this world. So today we're going to talk about the world of fashion and explore some of the inherent issues with it. And for that, I have a very special guest, who's also my friend since secondary 3. So he's Thaddeus Han Wen Jiang. So Thaddeus will be reading economics in NUS this year. And hi Thaddeus, welcome to the show.
Hi Gerard, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure and honor to be part of this podcast and show.
Yeah, sure, man. No problems. Okay, Thaddeus, so before we talk about the finer details and talk about fashion from a very a macroscopic point of view, I think we can start off by talking about your own personal experiences and how all this interest with fashion kind of started for you. Because you are literally the only person that I know of, right? Who's a fashion buff. I've not met anyone who's that interested in fashion as much as you are. So how did this all begin? When were you introduced to this world of fashion?
I see. Okay, so before I answer your question, I just want to make a very personal disclaimer that all of the views I share are of my own and of my own personal experiences with the fashion industry at large. So as we all know, the fashion industry is huge, and many of us may have differing or conflicting opinions about certain practices in the industry. So this podcast hopefully will just be an opportunity for me to share my personal experiences with fashion and how I have changed, how my life has changed as a result of interacting with the fashion industry and the knowledge I've learned from the fashion industry. I just wanted to push a disclaimer out in case my views may come up a bit conflicting or controversial with any of yours.
I think it's quite essential. The internet culture nowadays.
That's true.
So
Anyway, back to your question, Gerard, with regards to how I first got started with the fashion industry, I must say that I have actually been very inspired by my cousin to join, or rather read up a bit more about the fashion industry. My cousin is a professional fashion photographer, and presently she works in Singapore as well as in New York. I believe she works for an agency, so she shoots in a professional capacity, and she's been doing this for, I believe, close to 10 years or over a decade for now. Yeah, so that is really how I first got started with the fashion industry.
Okay, but I don't think that alone could have been the initial thing that could have been the initial spark, but something should have lasted that made you pursue it for quite some time. So when and why did you start to develop a genuine interest for fashion?
Alright, so I remember this conversation with my cousin happening back in I believe it was 2014 or somewhere along those lines, back in secondary school. Yeah, so back at that point in time, I had been writing on my personal blog. And back then, before Instagram was a huge thing, or Facebook, I guess Facebook was okay, but before Instagram was a huge thing, blogging was the in thing, and many people wanted to start their own blogs. So since I was already writing my own content on my own blog, I was thinking, hey, why not write about fashion? I told my cousin that, hey, I wanted to be a fashion blogger, and she challenged me. She was like, okay, so if you want to be a fashion blogger, if you want to write or speak about fashion, what do you know about fashion that you can share with your readers? And so I realized at that point,
that's fair enough, right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I realized that at that point in time, I was like, oh my god, I realized that I knew nothing much about fashion, and I wanted to blog about fashion because I thought it was the in thing, right? So that was me in 2014. But actually, recently, maybe a few weeks ago, I've had a chance to really think back on my career choices and really think as to why I decided to join fashion or what was so attractive about fashion. And I realized that, back then in secondary school, I had very bad acne, and my skin was really horrible. And I realized that fashion was like an outlet in a way, like this weird, skewed outlet for me to get accepted by people. Because when you think about fashion, you think of people who look fantastic. You think of people who, wear beautiful clothes and wear expensive clothes.
You have a very idealistic image.
Yeah, I guess so. So they are people who you want to be like. And because I used to have very bad acne in secondary school, and to a certain extent I got bullied in secondary school for my face, I wanted to be accepted and liked by the people around me. So I thought, hey, if I were to become a fashion blogger, maybe people would like me.
Okay.
Yeah, so that I didn't really think about that until very recently, like when I was reflecting on why I joined fashion in the first place, or what got me really interested in fashion. So partially I would say that my cousin was like the spark. Her challenge, so to speak, was like the spark for me to join fashion, to be read up about fashion. And then afterwards, upon further reflection, I realized that, because I wasn't very confident with myself. Therefore.
So you saw fashion as a kind of a escape route.
Correct, in a way, yes. So the more I read up about fashion, I realized that fashion is this amazing art medium that allows you to interact with. So for many other pieces of art, like many other media of art rather, they are more like static. So they're more like two-dimensional paintings or sculptures or installations. Whereas for fashion, you can actually interact with it firstly, and you can really express your own creativity, your own imaginations, your own point of view in something that can be interacted, that other people can interact with. And so I really appreciated that aspect of fashion.
Okay, so what was your initial aspiration in the field of fashion? Was it to be a fashion blogger?
Actually, I didn't really consider blogging as a legitimate thing back then. So I thought, hey, why not move on to become a fashion journalist?
Okay.
So fashion journalism was a genuine career path. I read up on this back in 2015, and I was thinking, hey, as a natural extension, why not transition from being a fashion blogger to being a fashion journalist who covers the fashion industry?
So that was kind of your dream job back in secondary school.
Back in secondary school, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fine. So that was why you wanted to do it. I mean, you have a solid reason, and that's what you wanted to become, right? So I think secondary school came to an end, and that's when JC started. So what steps did you take, in order to have, the opportunity to consider fashion as a realistic career choice in the future?
So this was from secondary school moving onwards to
JC.
Yeah. So in JC, I think as you know, I was an IB Arts student.
Yeah.
And I remember how I ended up being an IB Arts student. In fact, I got challenged by one of our classmates to pursue IB Art. Despite having zero prior art experience. For some reason, I don't know why I did it, but I just decided to take out IB Art as maybe sort of a personal challenge, which ended up to be one of the better or best decisions I made in my life, because I got to learn so much more about the fashion industry during my journey in IB Art, and it also really shaped me to become the person who I am today. So back to your question as to how that transition ended up. During my secondary school days, I was already reading up about, the different functions of fashion. So, for example, who are the main brands, who are the main luxury brands, what is luxury brands compared to what is fast fashion brands, for example, and who are the main key designers who we should know if you want to even enter the fashion industry. So people like Coco Chanel or Armani, etc., etc. And moving onwards to IB Art, it really gave me the opportunity to not only immerse myself more in fashion, because I actually worked with fashion as a medium, like fabric as a medium, and my works will revolve around fashion. But I also got a chance to really think about my own career path, even after graduating from JC, right? So so let's just go and look at point by point. First one and second point. So the first one is to how I developed my passion or my interest in fashion during IB. During my IB art, I really had the opportunity to create more works revolving around fashion or fabric, and I had the opportunity to go and research and read up more about the fashion industry at large. So this really continued to hone my interest in fashion. And having blogged in secondary school, I was thinking, hey, why not I consider this as a possible career choice? So I was thinking, why not apply to universities such as Central St. Martin's in London, which is one of the top fashion schools in the world, or London College of Fashion, which is also in London. I was thinking, why not pursue a degree in fashion journalism? And back then in JC, I guess I was a bit idealistic to think that was possible, but I'll come back to that later.
I remember you talking to me about all those universities like back then. And I was like, I was quite excited if you could come over to London too for like
which we kind of did actually recently.
We did meet up there. But then, from what you are saying, right, it seems like you had a lot of interest in fashion, that you even based your IB art off it. But then what happened? Like, where did it all go? Like, I don't know, like completely different. Because now you have chosen to read economics, right?
Yes, correct.
It's like a total change in like career path. Like, how did this happen? Why did this happen?
I see. So in JC we have this. We're always contending between choosing or following your passion and choosing a subject or a field of study that is practical, right? Especially in university.
I think everyone
most people
goes through that dilemma.
Phase. So I also had that conflict in mind. Should I pursue my passion, which is to become a fashion journalist and study overseas, or should I follow a more practical, traditional path to become, or as I said, to study a technical subject, which is economics? Alright, so I can say that I was really passionate about fashion as a whole, but I decided in the end there wasn't a very practical career choice. Why? Back in JC, I thought that, if I were to become a fashion journalist or if I were to start my own fashion business, I could maybe come back to Singapore and start something here. But I realized that in Singapore, there is really no fashion market at all. And I'm not saying this just because, majority of Singaporeans do not prioritize fashion as something to be overly concerned about. But if you look at the data and the numbers as to our population and our income levels and things like that, not everybody may appreciate fashion, or the market. To me, the population size is too small to sustain a livable market, and therefore I realized that it is not my own subjective opinion that there's no market here, but the numbers and the statistics are showing that even if I wanted to start a fashion business here, it is really extremely difficult to scale it to an extent where we can
to make it sustainable.
To make it sustainable and we can thrive off it. Correct. So I was actually very inspired still to maybe start my own thing, even if it might be a bit challenging to start a sustainable and scalable fashion business in Singapore, or make a career out of fashion in Singapore alone. I was thinking, hey, why not? And so this actually was what I've been working on, not really primarily, of course, but on the side in national service. So in national service, I thankfully have the opportunity to be a stay out clerk. And thankfully I didn't have to stay in. So this really gave me the opportunity to explore, interests outside of NS, outside of work, so to speak. And I decided to use this time productively to pursue or to explore a bit of interest here and there. And this all boils down to fashion. So the first thing that I really wanted to tackle. I was thinking if I wanted to start a startup, I have to solve a problem. And the first problem I wanted to tackle would be the waste problem, the sustainability issue that so many people don't like fashion for, or like are critical of fashion for. Many people, as you know, understand the environmental impacts of fast fashion. Fast fashion has been heavily criticized by many people as being extremely unsustainable, environmentally unfriendly practice, and yet people still support it. So I was thinking, is it possible to make the fast fashion industry less wasteful? Can we do something about the clothes that people throw away? Can we recycle it? So back then, at my point in time, I was thinking, if we can take pieces of paper, shred it, put it into pulp, make it into pulp or something, and recycle it, why can't we do the same for thread? Why can't we do the same for fabric? And why can't we make new pieces of clothing out of discarded pieces of clothing? Yeah, so I was just very intrigued by this idea, and that actually led me to read up a bit more on manufacturing of clothes, and why is it so difficult for fast fashion pieces and for clothing in general to be recycled. Yeah, so if you don't mind, I can just share with you a bit here and there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So I would say that it is not feasible for people to just take pieces of clothing and shred it into small pieces, make them into a pulp, and recycle into a brand new piece because of the nature of cotton. And how long the thread needs to be in order for a piece of clothing to be durable. Yeah, so the cotton thread has to be of a certain length in order for the piece to be usable. And when you shred a piece of clothing back and make it into a pulp, unfortunately that thread length will not be maintained, and therefore this idea or this imagined concept will not be possible to exist. It will not be possible for it to exist. Yeah, and I realized that that is why it is so difficult to do so. And that's just the practicality aspect. If you consider it from the financial aspect, in terms of how much does it cost to ship everything to a centralized distribution, centralized recycling center, break it down and make it from scratch again. It is really, really difficult to make this economically viable.
Has there been like any recycling efforts so far, like in the world? Have people managed to the so-called recycle all those threads and cottons to come up with new pieces of clothing?
So far, the only initiatives, or like the more mainstream initiatives, have been clothing collection drives. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen before. If you go to places like H&M or Levi's, there may be clothing collection bins for you to throw your worn clothing or your used clothing in, and then they would, so-called recycle it. Yeah, I don't know if you have ever experienced, if you've ever seen.
I think I vaguely remember there being those kind of bins, yeah.
Correct. So this actually makes the company look very good. It presents a very responsible corporate social responsibility front.
This is like kind of greenwashing in a sense.
Is it greenwashing? Maybe.
Because especially brands like H&M, which is known for being a fast fashion brand, right?
Correct.
So for you to I don't know, I just read it up somewhere, there are these active efforts that they have. It's more or less to mask the environmental damage it's causing to the world.
Yeah, I guess so. But if you look at the nature of the process in terms of cost, I don't think the business can survive if it were to
that's true. I think you leave that part to the later part of this convo. I think we got sidetracked a bit into fast fashion.
So my first idea was about how we can recycle pieces of fabric, pieces of fabric, and make new clothes out of it. But I realized that this is really challenging. So I was thinking, if it is not easy for people to recycle clothes, how can we continue to consume more sustainably? How can we solve the overall sustainability and waste problem that fashion is so known for? Another idea I had thought of was changing the way people consume clothes. If we cannot recycle it, maybe you can inspire people to consume differently. And one of the ideas I had in mind was something very similar to Rent the Runway or Stitch Fix in the United States. So back in, I believe this was in 2015, 2016, there's this Singaporean company called Style Theory that was starting to gain traction. So what style theory does is that it purchases like a huge inventory of clothes, and they allow customers to rent a few pieces of clothing maybe every month. I think about like 3 or 5 pieces of clothing maybe every month, and then they can return it and continue renting different pieces of clothing. And this actually creates a very cyclical wardrobe. So this, on the consumer front, helps the consumers to receive many pieces of clothing, many different pieces of clothing, and never feel like they don't have anything to wear. At the same time, it is a bit more sustainable because they are not buying new clothes, but they're just renting it. So this expands the product lifespan of every garment. So I was thinking, hey, this is actually quite a possible idea to consider to inspire people to consume clothing more sustainably. And I wanted to start this actually in NS. But I realized, but upon thinking about it a bit more, I realized that it may not be as easy as we think. Why? Because if you look at the logistics of this business, firstly you need to have the access to a large group of wholesalers who are willing to supply you with a huge inventory of clothes for a very low price. Right? Because even if you're going to buy everything yourself at retail price, it's going to be extremely expensive. Even if you can convince a huge group of wholesalers to sell you clothing, the startup cost, the capital required to start this venture up will be extremely high. So to me, startup costs might have been a barrier at that point in time. This was during NS, so I was quite young that time. And I was really thinking about how to go about doing it. So firstly, startup costs would be an issue. And secondly would be logistics. So what these rental companies do is that they help you to deliver the clothing to you, and they collect the clothing back from you, and they will do the laundry for you. Like they'll help you to dry clean the clothing before sending out to the next customer, etc., etc. And if there's any minor issues or things like that, they'll help you to fix it. So if you look at the operational costs, the logistics costs, is of course very sizable because you need to factor in like delivery costs, laundry costs, dry cleaning costs, etc. And you take all of these costs and add it on top of the cost required for you just to start this venture and gain your own inventory. So I was thinking, maybe it is possible to break even if you have a sizable group of customers. Maybe like, 5-10 years. But at the point when I was first starting, I was thinking, is it possible for me to start with the very little capital I have? And I realized that it's really very challenging to build something given my age at that point in time. So in retrospect, I realized that it may be a bit challenging to establish such a huge physical supply chain and start this venture. So therefore, I didn't really start the clothing recycling venture, and I also didn't really start the reusing and recycling clothing rental venture. And the final idea I had towards the end of NS in 2017 was this personalization.
2018.
Oh, sorry, 2018. 2018 and 2019, somewhere around there. That was in my second year of NS. So the third and final idea as of today was this personalization technology that would recommend you clothes according to your body size, your preferences, what looks good on you, and what doesn't look good on you. So it will not recommend you clothes that doesn't look good on you. And all of these recommendations will be made before you even visit the store. So you can think of it as like a personal stylist, a proactive personal stylist. But I realized that this is extremely, I would say a bit challenging on the technological front to initiate because this is advanced machine learning, and at that point in time, unfortunately, I didn't have the technical skill set nor the access to the network for this to take place. So I realized that this may not be very viable to start back then. But I would say that in retrospect, these are the ideas I've had that really allowed me to explore more solutions as to how we can consume fashion more responsibly, and how challenging it really is to implement a sustainable solution, not just in terms of environmental sustainability,
Mm.
but economic sustainability. Yeah.
Mm.
So while it is easy to criticize fast fashion as being extremely wasteful, while it is easy to criticize startups for going down or asking why are they even trying, if you look at it in retrospect, it is really challenging to create sustainable long-term solutions that make economic sense for the fashion industry. Yeah.
So that kind of pushed you to not pursue it as a degree.
At this point in time, I would say that I'm really still thinking as to whether I want to pursue fashion in the future.
Okay.
I was thinking, because I'm doing cons as
Yeah.
a major, and I was thinking, can I maybe use my skills that I'll be learning in this course, coupled with maybe work experience, to really immerse myself into the fashion industry, to see, okay, what are the current solutions existing in the market, and how can I leverage on my own skills and my own prior experience and knowledge gained from work to develop solutions.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not saying that I'm completely giving up, I guess.
So you have not ruled it off completely.
Correct. But it's
Okay.
really just shifting an approach, and instead of rushing forward so quickly, why not just take the time to
Take
learn?
a step back, explore probably a
Correct.
different career path.
Correct.
And you can always go back to fashion because that's where your passion lies, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have the answer for why
Sorry.
I just changed his career
God.
path.
Yeah.
But yeah, then so that is that, and let's go to the world of fashion today. So how do you view fashion, especially today, after doing a lot of research on it and working on it for the past 6 to 8 years?
I would say that my perception towards the fashion industry has definitely changed the more I got to read about it. And the reasons as to why I got immersed in this whole industry in the first place back in 2014, 2015 has completely changed over the years. I feel that the reasons as to what got me attracted is no longer there. So let me just elaborate a bit further.
Okay.
Yeah. So while I think all of these new fashion related startups and these innovative ways to shop, while I think they are fantastic in pushing the boundaries or the ways we shop forward, I think that the nature of the fashion industry as a whole is changing. Yeah, so let me just share with you a bit about the history of fashion and how fashion has evolved over the past century. Yeah, and this is not going to sound super boring history lesson, so it's a very quick primer, so don't worry. Yeah, fashion really got started, I would say, after World War II. Back then, before the war, when people wanted new clothes, they obviously didn't have any shopping malls or places to buy it from. They had to make their own, right? So in Europe especially, not really many, but in Europe there are a few specific tailors who basically were really known for the quality of their craftsmanship and the garments that they produce. And back then only, of course, the rich people could afford fashion, correct? So the rich people usually went to these select few tailors to make exquisite pieces of clothing, and word of mouth soon spread about them. And these tailors are basically the brands who we know today. So people like Christian Dior, people like Coco Chanel back then, people like Karl Lagerfeld, Yves Saint Laurent, etc. And I would say that the fashion industry really exploded after World War II, right? So Coco Chanel, for Chanel they started before World War One. I believe it was 1913 or something along that lines. And Christian Dior, he presented his new look collection, his famous, ultra famous collection in 1947, which is after World War II. Yeah. So back then, fashion was really dedicated and devoted to craftsmanship, to bespoke luxury, bespoke tailoring, and really the expression of what the designer's vision was. And that was why I got so intrigued and interested in fashion in the first place. But fast forward to maybe 1980s, there was this guy who came into the industry and changed everything. Yeah, his name was Bernard Arnault. He's the founder, or rather the chairman and CEO of this conglomerate called LVMH. LVMH is the largest luxury conglomerate in the world.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a French-based conglomerate, and this guy essentially started it all. I believe he started it with the acquisition of Christian Dior in 1984. So back then in 1984, I believe Christian Dior wasn't really doing that well, and Bernard Arnault, he came in and turned the business over. Bernard Arnault, unfortunately, did not have a fashion background like all of the other tailors and couturiers. His background was from real estate. He basically was a real estate businessman. Oh my god, it sounds like Donald Trump. Okay, but yeah, so he came in and he basically transformed Christian Dior into the cash cow that we know today. And he basically applied this to many other fashion and luxury brands under the LVMH umbrella. So back in, immediately after the war, fashion was all about attention to detail, luxury, and bespoke tailoring, and really, I would say, putting in time and attention to detail over quantity and speed. Unfortunately, with the acquisition of Christian Dior in 1984, Bernard Arnault saw this fantastic money-making opportunity, this capitalistic opportunity to from the fashion industry. So, okay, honestly, I must say that Arnault's idea, his vision was genius. Why? He knew that Christian Dior wasn't doing that well, but he was extremely well known for making luxury clothing at very high prices because of the attention to detail and the history of his house. And so he wanted to sell consumers this vision, even after Christian Dior passed away. He knew that luxury fashion had the potential to be sold to many consumers because of the allure of luxury and the glamour that it possesses. And he knew that he could capitalize on this opportunity long into the future, even after all of the founders passed away. Therefore, you see luxury today, all of the luxury brands we see at least, are still bearing the founders' names, even after the founders have passed away, because they're still continuing to sell you that vision, that history, and that craftsmanship. Yeah, but I've actually read this. I wouldn't say that this is all from me. I've actually been reading this book called Luxury by this fashion journalist called Dana Thomas. Yeah, and in this book, she really outlines how fashion has changed since the earlier 20th century to where we are today. And I would just say that the soul of the fashion industry has completely changed from why I used to love it in the past. And I think that, honestly, frankly speaking, fashion might have lost its soul today. Luxury fashion especially is all about milking the designers to produce as many high quality and beautiful designs as possible, with a disregard to the attention to detail that goes into every garment, right? And in retrospect, I guess this is unfortunately the case because they are trapped by their own success. So LVMH as well as Kering is like the parent competitor, the main competitor of LVMH. Kering is Kering.
Okay.
Yeah. So LVMH owns brands like Louis Vuitton, Yves Saint Laurent. Oh my god, no, sorry. Oh my god.
Okay.
Yeah, so LVMH is like this parent company that owns brands like Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, Celine. Whereas Kering owns brands like GwG, Yves Saint Laurent, Alexander Wang. Right, so these two I would say are the main luxury competitors. And all of these conglomerates are also publicly listed on the stock market, stock exchange. So unfortunately, they have to present quarterly results to investors, and unfortunately you have to present profits or at least a rising revenue every single quarter. And unfortunately, to me, they are trapped by their own success because you have to cut costs and maximize profit in a publicly listed company. So to me, fashion has lost its soul. People or luxury brands today are producing because they have to continue producing at speed, and that quality and the attention to detail is no longer there.
And I think we were discussing for this episode, right, you were mentioning something about diffusion lines. Can you explain more about it? Because I think many of us are actually not aware of such a term.
Okay, correct. So actually this really brings up really well to the topic I was speaking about earlier, about how fashion is really milking every opportunity to generate more revenue and profit. We can think of diffusion lines as the more affordable options for consumers who unfortunately may not be able to purchase the highest tier products. So the diffusion line is basically a more affordably priced range of products that share the same designer's name. So the most common, or rather a common diffusion line we can talk about is Armani.
Okay.
Giorgio Armani is the premium price clothing range. So if you think about making bespoke suits, custom making your own suits, tailoring your own suits, you go to Giorgio Armani. And then the sportswear line is Emporio Armani.
Okay.
So it's like the more casual, more sportswear line. And the diffusion lines of Armani would be Armani Exchange, Armani Jeans, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So some consumers, they may want to buy into the Armani vision. They want to buy into the Armani dream, but they cannot afford a $15,000 suit made by Giorgio Armani. So they can buy something from, I don't know, Armani Jeans, for example, which maybe go for $120. So this is more affordable for the consumer to buy into the dream, and this is also beneficial for the Armani owner because ultimately all of these
it retains like the brand name,
correct. And this was exactly Bernard Arnault's idea when he first bought over Christian Dior in 1984. He knew that you can always milk the brand, like the vision of what the brand is trying to say.
Because I think people are willing to go ahead and buy, right? As in,
correct.
I think there's always this constant I don't say search, but this constant hunger, to kind of. I mean, if you ask any other person, they'll be like, well, I want to get something from this particular brand, which is of the top tier. So, and these are the brands that people actually want to own it someday. And I feel as long as that idea lives on within the society, right, these guys can go and make their money.
Correct. So I think social status is one of our fundamental human needs.
Yeah.
And buying a luxury product conveys to the world that you are of a certain social status. So what these luxury brands do is excellent marketing. They tell you that yes, you still can buy into this brand and you still can be perceived of this specific status, even if this is a diffusion line, even if this is not the premium price brand that is known for being luxurious.
So that's quite interesting. So I mean, having said all of this, right, it's about these conglomerates and these big players in this whole market. What kind of advice would you give, or what would you do if you were to start a new fashion company? So what would your advice be?
Honestly, I would say if you're just starting out as maybe either one person or a really small team, I would not suggest competing against these large corporations and large conglomerates. I would suggest really sticking to one core product and being very well known for the singular core product first. And then slowly over time, you branch out into related niche products.
What do you mean by a core product? Like a shirt or something like that?
I would say that you should really be known for a very niche product and take a very specific stand towards an issue.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you heard about this fashion designer called Vivienne Westwood.
No.
I'm not sure if she's London based, but I know she's from the UK, and she's very known for bringing this punk rock style to the mass market. And she's perpetually known for being very rebellious against conventions and always and she's always sticking to a very tried and true punk rock rebellious aesthetic throughout her entire career. So it is very difficult to establish a brand that stands for everything, especially in this day and age. It might be more effective to just do one small, not really small, but one unique thing first and getting really good at it. And then maybe over time, as you expand, people may support you for other related areas.
Oh, people like LVMH might buy you.
Yes, actually, it makes sense. I remember they recently made an acquisition. Okay, I don't think it's because it was niche, but it is. They do have quite a niche product. I believe in 2018 or 2017 or 2019, I can't remember. They bought over Fenty. Fenty Beauty.
Okay.
Yeah, and do you know what Fenty Beauty is?
I think I've seen it.
Yeah, so Fenty Beauty is this beauty and skincare line owned by Rihanna, right?
Mm.
And they bought it over. That's the most recent purchase by the LVMH umbrella. So Fenty Beauty is known for, So Fenty Beauty is known for providing many shades of skincare and like lipstick and concealer and foundation for many skin tones.
Okay.
Yeah, so regardless of what color of the skin you have, there will be a shade for you for Fenty Beauty. And so Fenty is known for its inclusivity, and partially because Rihanna is the founder, so she is a person of color herself, and so there's this compelling draw to her brand. Yeah, so Fenty is known for skincare firstly, and more importantly, it is known for inclusive skincare that really caters for every consumer, regardless of the color of their skin.
Okay.
And this is what they're known for. So maybe I guess you can say that they are successful because Rihanna started it, but they're also known for being inclusive. So that is how they thrive in today's day and age.
Okay.
So that's an example of how starting with a very niche product and how being known for a very niche cause would really take you very far in today's value-driven society.
Okay, sure. So moving on, right? Let's so since we spoke about luxury brands, in such depth, I think now we can speak about or talk about the side of the spectrum, which is basically fast fashion. So I think fast fashion kind of it's an example of process optimization, right? They kind of cut down they basically streamline the entire process of manufacturing clothes in terms of the designing phase, getting the materials and actually coming up with the clothes and then selling it to the mass market. I think compared to luxury brands, which takes probably a few months, probably more than half a year,
You're correct.
and you just reduce it to within a weeks or within a couple of months. So I think it has kind of changed the entire game, because I think now with especially with social media, things like Instagram, I think people are constantly looking for new designs, new fashion, so that their Instagram is always changing. They are not wearing the same thing, and I think that's what really helped this kind of fast fashion business to really boom, and it's boded well for them. And so I think this is why fast fashion came about, and it's what it does. But in your opinion, right, do you think it is ethical? What do you think about the ethical aspect of it? Because if I'm not wrong, right, a lot of this streamlined process, a lot of this cutting down the costs, I think has a lot of cost to pay for. And so what are your thoughts about these costs?
I see. I would say that fast fashion is like the McDonald's of the fashion industry.
Right? So
Yeah, fast fashion is like the McDonald's of the fashion industry.
Yeah.
All of the manufacturing process, the merchandising process, the resource allocation process has been streamlined to ensure that speed is prioritized. So I really completely agree with you as to how fast fashion really meets our desires, especially the younger generation's desires for something new consistently.
And they also come up with designs which are, I think, quite similar to those top luxury brands, right? I mean, they come up with this thing called knockoffs, which are very similar in design, but they're not exactly the same. So it still gives you, from very far, I don't think one can differentiate between an actual luxury brand, shoes or clothes from a fast fashion product. So what do you think about this again?
With regards to the ethical question, is fast fashion ethical? Obviously, the answer, at least to me, is no. From a resource allocation and economic standpoint, this is fantastic because it allows customers to receive new pieces of clothing as quickly and as cheaply as possible. But is it ethical? No, because this accessibility is indeed gained, but at what cost? I would say that it is at the cost of our environment, firstly and most importantly, and secondly also at the cost of human lives. So in order to minimize costs to produce clothing as cheaply as possible, the amount of money that we are paying to the people who make these clothes will also be very minuscule. So I would say that unfortunately the industry has decided to go ahead with leveraging on all of these lower skilled labor, which is cheaper and also more efficient to make these pieces of clothing that can be resold for a cheaper retail price at least. Yeah. So in my opinion, no, fast fashion is not ethical because of the cost, and not in terms of monetary cost per se, but the environmental cost and the human livelihood aspect of this. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think that pretty much encompasses all the wrong things with, not all the wrong things, I would say like all the shortcomings of fast fashion, basically. And but then, so in your life, which kind of brands do you go for? Like, do you try to get those luxury brands? Are you okay with fast fashion, or are you like the mid tier?
Actually, just to add a bit more about the fast fashion portion.
Yeah, I think we can.
Yeah, I would say that yes, maybe it is easy to criticize, the fashion industry for exploiting lower income and lower skilled workers. And usually these workers will be found in places like China, Nepal, India, like the more rural regions of these countries, obviously. Because they exploit the human lives in order to produce more clothes cheaply. But at the same time, we also need to question ourselves, and this is really examining the opposite side of the argument. Like these positions, as exploiting as they may seem, it might actually contribute to the region's jobs, or maybe the villages or the city's jobs, right? It may give these low-skilled workers a chance for them to make themselves valuable and contribute their skills back to the broader society at large.
Yeah, because I think it's important to see like the other side of the coin as well, because if you're really talking about these exploitations and like sweatshops and stuff, we have to see whether are there any real alternatives to it. Because I think a lot of people do speak out about it. They're like, okay, don't support fast fashion, do not support things that make use of these low skilled workers in like developing countries. But to be honest, what are the other alternatives that these people have? Because I don't think
employment.
I don't think the governments are also like providing any other like skill upgradings or providing education which will solve like most of these problems. And I think from that point of view, right, this is what they could at least earn. I mean, it could be, and I've heard in certain cases that like less than $1 a day.
Correct.
I know it's not sufficient. I know it's not enough, but it could be, they could be worse off without these jobs and without these the whatever little money they gain from it. So I think it's as you said, it's very important to analyze the situation from both sides, and also like really try to understand what they are arguing for, and also like take a personal stand on whether you want to support it or not.
Correct.
So I think
I mean, the economic conditions and the employment conditions are definitely not ideal.
Yeah.
But if we look at these circumstances in relation with the other alternatives that they may have, this may not be the worst circumstance they can be in, firstly, and they may not even have many other livable alternatives to even contend with. Basically, they do not really have the privilege of choice.
Yeah.
Right? So unfortunately, this to me is more of a structural and social issue. Personally, I feel that this is more for like policies to resolve and more for the governments to step in, maybe to inspire more infrastructure in the countries or more access to education in the countries. It is not within the fashion industry to make much of a change for. I do think we can still take steps to maybe be more transparent about our supply chains. So I do know of a few small brands in Singapore that are very transparent about where their clothes come from. So these brands include labels like Paradigm Shift Label or Source Collections. They are very fully transparent about who makes their clothes, how much does each part, like each factor of production costs, and where all their clothes come from. So I do think that the industry can take some steps to be a bit more transparent about the process that goes into making the clothing. But ultimately, if you want to resolve the issue of how fast fashion exploits people and things like that, there has to be a combination between. There has to be some collaboration between the fashion industry and maybe the government or like the broader people, the broader decision makers. Yeah, we cannot just blame the fashion industries.
You just can't pinpoint on one particular factor.
Correct. We cannot just expect that one industry to make the entire change throughout the entire value chain for the entire world. It's just, to me, not really very feasible. Yeah. So I think we really need to appreciate the different viewpoints that and the different circumstances that those people over there might have. Yeah. Because from our context, $1 a day, $1 a day looks horrible. It is horrible, but for those people there, it might be all they have, and it may be a good option compared to the alternatives that are presented to them. Yeah.
So like going back to the question, what kind of clothes do you wear?
Honestly, most of my clothes come from Uniqlo. I mean, I feel that Uniqlo clothes are cheap.
Is Uniqlo a fast fashion brand?
Yes,
it is,
actually.
right?
That's why I unfortunately I do consume fast fashion. That's why I'm not extremely vocal against it, because I feel like it will be a bit hypocritical to be fully against it and yet still buy from it. Right. Unfortunately, I still do buy from Uniqlo. Their clothes are affordable, they're durable, and they're basic and look good. Right. And it's easy to dress up or dress down with. For that matter, yes. But I feel that we can consider more local options firstly, more sustainable options, and maybe support more independent fashion designers, be it in Singapore or abroad. Yeah.
Okay.
So local fashion options, for example, maybe brands like Source Collections. Source Collections basically sell very basic clothes. Basic as in like basic t-shirts, like white t-shirts or black t-shirts, made of sustainable materials, environmentally friendly materials. Another one will be Paradigm Shift Label, as I had shared earlier. If you want to support more independent designers, you can go and look them up. Like I can't think of any Singaporean ones specifically in mind. I know of one in the UK called Edward Meadham. Yeah, his clothes are beautiful. Like I really love their clothes. Like I think on my Instagram I do. It's like this very large graphic tee, like this long sleeve, very large graphic tee with a huge design over here. Yeah, I do post on Instagram. I really love his clothes. To me, his clothes are not that expensive. It's about $80 per piece, like for a top. So to me, it's not expensive. To others, it might be more expensive, and maybe fast fashion may be their main choice, like their main preference. Yeah, but for me, I think I do support. I do consume fast fashion, but at the same time, if I want to purchase more higher quality stuff, I'll definitely support either more local brands or more independent brands. And if you want to look at menswear, like suits or whatever, you can consider Benjamin Barker too. Like I believe it is either an Australian or Singaporean brand. I can't remember. Yeah. So there are other alternatives out there that fall in the middle of the spectrum between fast fashion and luxury. I'm not saying that if you don't support fast fashion, or if you don't want to buy fast fashion, the only other alternative is luxury. That's not true. There are many other environmentally friendly solutions out there. There are many other smaller independent labels out there. And I think these brands also deserve our support. And we can really purchase these clothes if we look hard enough, if we go research them hard enough. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to your life. So what are your plans for the future? So how do you think of incorporating fashion as part of your day-to-day life?
At this point in time, I'm a bit more mindful about how I consume. After like not really nearly 10 years, but after quite a significant number of time looking into how the fashion industry has been evolving, I think my own clothing choices, I will be more mindful over my own clothing choices. I would of course try to only buy clothes within my means firstly, and buy clothes from labels whose values I align with. Yeah, and at the same time, we also should, at least for me, I would try to present myself in a more I'll try to make myself more presentable, not by the the price of the clothing that I wear, or like the brands of the clothing I wear, but how I style it.
Okay.
So some people can buy clothes from like Uniqlo or maybe buy, I don't even know, H&M or something, but they can look really good at it. Really good in it because they know how to style themselves well. Yeah. And I think it's important to not just chase brands or not just buy the most expensive product from the most expensive brands, but learn what works on you, what colors suit you, what cuts of clothing suit you, and how you can look the best in whatever clothes you may be wearing. Yeah.
But then, as a career...
Okay, so... Sorry, I'm going a bit off tangent. Anyway, yeah, so for my career right now, I'm about to pursue a degree in economics. And I'm thinking of really leveraging on the skill sets that I learned to maybe improve fashion businesses. Yeah. So I'm not sure you realize, but throughout this entire talk, I never really talked about design per se. Because I really enjoy fashion businesses and understanding like the analytical side that goes into running a fashion brand. So be it writing, breaking down the conceptual ideas, or running a business. Yeah. And I'm thinking when I graduate, it would be good to leverage on the skills I've learned along the way to maybe contribute to the industry in whatever way I can with these skills. Alternatively, I can maybe try to start something again. After these few years, and hopefully after a few years of working experience, I'll grow a bit older and more wiser and a bit more experienced. So if I were to contribute into the fashion industry again in the future, I'll make more informed decisions based on the experiences and lessons I've learned along the way. Yeah, so that is really the two paths I may consider in the future. For all we know, I may not even join the fashion industry in the future. So I don't know.
But you're quite open to it, and you think
Correct.
there might be a possibility for it in the future.
Correct. I think it's good to just leverage like the skills you learn in university or your past skills and just see where you can continue applying them for the future. Yeah. And it's good to be open-minded for your own career opportunities. Yeah.
So I think we have come to the end of this episode. So in my opinion, right, I think I've honestly learned a lot from this podcast, like be it in the pre-recording phase when we interacted and did quite a bit of research, and of course during this recording phase as well. And I think I have personally learned a lot, and I would not have researched on this if not for this episode. So I'll say like thank you for that, and and for you guys, I think like the fashion industry is one of the the biggest industries out there in the world right now, and it's quietly kind of made a huge impact in our day-to-day lives because we wear clothes everywhere we go out, right? So it kind of makes a statement to like other people, and especially with Instagram and social media. Whatever you wear, people kind of look at it. Even if you do not want them to, it is kind of like a central attraction or central focus of the image. So I think it's very important, and I hope that through this podcast, we were able to make you maybe more aware of like the situation present in the fashion industry, and hopefully the next time you step into a clothing store, to buy or purchase any product, any clothing product, I think you will kind of consider whatever we have said, and really try to understand like the ethics of fashion as mentioned by Thaddeus, and make an informed decision. So yeah, I think that's the end of this episode, and thank you Thaddeus for being part of it, and
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, sure, no problem. And goodbye to all of y'all, and I'll see y'all in another episode in a different topic next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah, I think that was
that's not bad. That's not
good.
bad. Okay.